initiative, ours started with a woman, or rather by a woman. And it is this woman whose name is Saudat Ismailova. Some of you might know her, some not, but well, she's a visual artist, director, and video artist from Uzbekistan. She's been active since like 20 years, I would say, already in the region, in Central Asia, and also internationally. And in 2021, she contacted me because she said that she got invited to take part in the 15th edition of Documenta. And as some of you might know, maybe some of you even visited this Documenta, but it was very special because it was about collectivity and about sharing collective practices, collective knowledge. The whole Documenta was built around this notion of Lumbung, which is the notion that we can encounter in the Southeast Asia, which literally means rice barn, and it's like a vernacular architecture that you can see in Indonesia. And as you might know, the curators of this Documenta was a collective, Ruang Grupa, and so they proposed this Documenta to develop the values of solidarity, mutual aid, collectivity, as living together and sharing resources, taking care of each other. And so Saudat was one of the few individual artists who got invited to Documenta, but she was very much interested in bringing with her young artists from the region. And so she proposed this idea of creating a collective of Central Asian artists and doing some things together. But I must say that the conceptual frame was settled by Saudat herself, because she was already developing a project for Documenta, which was all about Chiltans. Chiltans is a very special notion that you can encounter in Central Asian mythology. Well, basically, it's a Persian word that means 40 bodies, Chil as 40, Tan as body. And these are entities, 40 or 41 of them, who can take any shape. They can be either human-like, like be in the shape of men or women, children, or they can represent natural phenomena like wind, water. They can also be animals. So there is not a lot of text that we can find on Chiltans and that explain what are Chiltans, but there is one of them which is kind of interesting because it was written in the early Soviet period by one scientist called Mikhail Andreev, who was an ethnographer and also Orientalist, and who spent a lot of time studying Central Asia and Caucasus. And he collected several stories from the locals where they would mention the Chiltans. So these are 40 spirits that appear during the periods of crisis, let's say, when people are going through some difficult events. And I think that we all can agree that something that we're going through now at the moment as humanity can be called a crisis. So Saudat wanted to work with this idea of guiding spirits that can help us to go through this difficult time. And she proposed to think collectively about the Chiltans and about what can they be today. Who are the Chiltans of today, basically? So that was the starting point for DAVRA's activity. Speaking about collective, so DAVRA, as some of you might know, especially those who speak Uzbek or Tajik, DAVRA is a Uzbek word which means circle, but not only circle, like not only as a geometrical form, but also like a social circle, the circle of friends, acquaintances, circle of people you meet. So we wanted to develop this idea of circle, cycle, being together in a circle, also because like in a circle, there's kind of no hierarchy. You cannot know where the circle starts from, where it ends. So there is like this idea of cycle. We decided to name our collective like this. And as it was already told by Hanwen in introduction, we're 18 now, forming the collective, and we come from 4 formerly Soviet Central Asian republics. You can see a little map here on the screen with these countries we're coming from. So there is Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Kyrgyzstan. And I must say that these are not the only countries that form Central Asia, because Central Asia, the definition of Central Asia and the countries that form the region depends very much on the perspective from which we're looking at the region. And I'm gonna get back to that later when talking about public program. But yeah, like just a little map so you could figure out where we're coming from. Yeah. And so we presented 2 things at Documenta 15. There was this publication, like a compilation of texts and images that we produced with the financial help of Documenta. So you can see it here. Shapeshifting Eternal Spirits from Central Asia. It was called Chiltan. There were like 2 academic texts from decolonial researcher Madina Plostanova. There were texts by Saodat. And there were also texts of some of DAVRA participants, because we decided to kind of resonate with this idea of with the notion of Chiltans, either by a text or by a graphic symbol, a writing, I don't know, painting or anything, photography also. So you can see some pages. Maybe you also have them at the space, I don't know, maybe not. But yeah, just let me know if you're like interested. I can also like elaborate a bit more on the publication. But there was also 41-day-long public program at Documenta. So I must begin by saying that why 41 days? It's because we were trying to kind of do our public program within the period which is called Chilla. Chilla, it means 40. And these are 40 hottest days of a year. Like in Central Asia, as you might know, we have continental climate. It means that in summer it gets pretty hot, and in winter you have like a genuine winter with snow. It might also get quite cold. And so when there's like summer heat, people of Central Asia, they would stay at their places, try to kind of focus on themselves. And in Uzbekistan, precisely, you have this architecture, which is called Chilla Hona, where you can like spend this 40 days of the summer heat, staying inside, staying cool, reflecting on yourself, kind of introspecting. And so we were trying to recreate this Chiltan Hona. So like this place, the architectural space where Chiltans would gather. So as you might see in this picture, this is the basement of Friedrichshain Museum. So the main site of Documenta, one of the main sites of Documenta. And the whole basement was given to Saodat. So she had like 5 rooms in there with different works. There was no natural light. So it was like pretty dark in there. And of these 5 rooms that were given to Saodat, 2 were occupied by DAVRA. So now you can see a film that was made by Saodat specifically for this 15th edition of Documenta. It's called Bibi Seshambe, and it's about generally Central Asian Cinderella. So this like myth, legend of a patron saint of all the women who work with textile. There were also some other works by Saodat like this, where you could see a projection of 40 faces, 40 Central Asian girls, and their faces being projected on silk, which was brought from Uzbekistan. There was also this video work, which is called Joldybec. It's like a place of pilgrimage in Central Asia. We have many of them. And this is one of these places where mostly women, young women, would come to make a wish. And this video work was kind of anticipating the presence of DAVRA, because Documenta started on the 18th of June. And our public program, DAVRA, started a week later. So during the first week of Documenta, there was like mostly Saodat's work in there in space. And then 1 week later, we started our public program. and I'm gonna talk about it right now. So yeah, this is one of the spaces that was dedicated to DAVRA. You can see like this traditional Central Asian low circle table called dastarkhan, and some mattresses called kurpe or kurpacha. So these are the mattresses that we would use in Central Asia, because as you might know, our traditional culture never had chairs. So we would always sit on the floor, like working, eating, doing things on the floor always. So we wanted to bring this element of our home culture to Katsel. So where there were only like tables, you can see some visitors sitting there enjoying the publication, the one I was just like talking about. And so this was like the scenography, the place where we would do our things, our 41 days of public program. And what is also important to say is that it was not an exhibition in a traditional sense. We did like a series of activations. And speaking of them, there were like 6 thematic sections, because 41 days are equal to 6 weeks. So we were like trying to dedicate 1 week to one particular theme. So we started with like female experiences, then we made a focus on kids, then it was like a week of ancestral knowledge, then it was this week called Her Gaze, which was about like film and video work produced by Central Asian female artists. Then we had this section called Central Asia and Beyond, which I'm gonna explain a bit later. And then we got back to this idea of Chiltans, revisited it, and how this idea of Chiltans can intertwine with identity and ecology today. So these were like 6 main sections of our presence in there. And so this is like the opening of our public program. This was a collective, I wouldn't say performance, it was like a collective action that we did together. You can see some DAVRA participants, Saudat herself, and also visitors, because we really wanted to include visitors in all of our activities there at Documenta. So what we did in there to begin our public program, we cooked, we had some tea, because this is something that we do in Central Asia always. We start by a tea, we would end something by a tea. So we drank tea, we read the text of Andreev, the one I was talking about before, who gave this rather masculine frame to Chiltans, but still it was important for us like to read this text and to kind of reappropriate it in our own way. So we were all doing this, and then the moment that you can see on the picture is the moment of producing the candles that we have in Central Asia. These are the candles that can be produced by, especially you can meet them, like see them, if you encounter some, let's say, shamans or baksa, as we call them. They would do this candles during the rituals. So they do them out of the plant that grows in Central Asia, in the steppes of Central Asia. We call it adraspan, but I know that the Latin name of it is Harmala piganum. So we actually burn this plant to purify our places, but we also make candles out of it. So we were together producing these candles, and then you can see some balls on the table with the soil that was brought from Central Asia. So we brought a bit of soil from Kazakhstan, from Uzbekistan, from Kyrgyzstan, from Tajikistan also. And so we mixed all these like soils together and then put the candles in it. And we burned the candles at the end of the public program. So we're like with us all this time. And also another thing that we did at the opening, I don't have a picture of it, I'm very sorry, but as you might know, those especially who visited Documenta, like just in the front of Frideriziana Museum, there are 2 oak trees that were planted by Joseph Beuys and his son 40 years ago, precisely 40 years ago, for Documenta 7. And we actually wanted to interact with these trees, because as you might know, Joseph Beuys was one of the artists who, like, let's say, made a whole myth about himself. And it was very much related to Central Asia, to this notion of Eurasia, to this idea that he was saved by Crimean Tatars and all these things, and you know that he was working a lot with felt, like traditional Central Asian material. So we wanted to also kind of reappropriate and propose another maybe perspective on these two trees, which were kind of phallic at the entrance of the museum. So we put some textile that we also brought from Central Asia on the trees, that something that we would do often in the region. We would put like textile, making a wish. And that's how we wanted to mark the landscape of Kassel by our own energy, by our own presence. Yeah, so it was also something that we did in there. And then, of course, now I'm going to talk about the projects of those members who are not today with us, because I don't want to repeat what my colleagues will talk about later. So you only have those who unfortunately could not join us today. So this is the project of Tajik artist Diana Rahmanova, who actually was cooking a palau or osh. It's like traditional Central Asian dish in there. And you can see on the picture, Diana like kind of preparing the rice. And then the rest of the dish was made outside at the backyard of Friedrichshain Museum, there where there was a kitchen, common kitchen that we shared with everyone. And so Diana's activation, one of her activations was, it basically consisted of like cooking this pilaf for everyone and sharing then this moment with everyone, not only with visitors or artists of Documenta, but also like with technical team, with those who were helping us, like drivers, I don't know, like people who work in there at the museum. We all ate together then. Then we had the second section focused on kids. Why we did this section? Because I think children are a very important public, but they're very much often they are overlooked. But we, like some of us are already mothers. We understand how important it is to engage children, the youngest ones, in artistic activities. And also those of you who visited this Documenta, you might know that there was like a whole section of the museum dedicated to children. There was like Rudu Kids with different educational and entertaining activities. So we also proposed a series of workshops. So you can see on the pictures children holding traditional Tajik doll called Luchtak, and Diana, the one that you saw on the previous picture with Palau, she animated this workshop. Then there was a workshop of Intizor, Otaniyozova, where we were producing like collages, paper and cardboard collages. And then we also translated some Central Asian cartoons. And they were also like on loop at our basement space, so children could go down and spend some time in there looking at our cartoons. Then there was this section called Ancestral Knowledge, where we were trying to reconnect with the knowledge that was transmitted to us by the generations and generations of our ancestors. And here I wanted to show you two kind of opposite, but also very much close to each other, like two examples. So on the left side, you have Torjan Karatai, who is a musician, kind of traditional academic musician from Kazakhstan. And she also kind of comes from a musical family, like the whole family is a musician family. And so she was performing, playing on this traditional Kazakh instrument called kobus. So it kind of the instrument she holds in her hands. It has strings that are made of horsehair. And I don't know if you ever heard the sound of kobus, you would never forget it, because like it really sounds like a step, like wind, I can say, from my perspective. And what Torjan did, she did like a series of meditation sessions. So she would just be there in the space, play on kobus, and people would just lay down on kurpacha and just enjoy the music and kind of try to reconnect themselves. And then there was like kind of an opposite, but also very much related to music project by Kokonya, who's a sound artist from Kazakhstan also, where she, together with Medina Bazargali, they did this project where Kokonya was playing. She prepared the DJ set, And Madina did the VJ set. So the images that were projected, they were visuals, they were created by Madina. And Gogonia, she would play the music. And it was also like kind of very interesting approach to ancestral practices, but like from a modern perspective. So it was kind of a party inside this space. Then the next session called Her Gaze, where we presented, as I said, films and video art by Central Asian female artists, directors. So you have here picture of Anisa Sabiri's film. She's a director from Tajikistan. And on the right side, you have Medina Bazargali's video art. Yeah, and then there was this fifth section called Central Asia and Beyond, where we invited the artists that we pretty much consider Central Asian, but they come from geographical spaces that maybe are like not taken into account today when we talk about Central Asia. And what I mean is that the places like Eastern Turkestan or Xinjiang, Afghanistan, Mongolia, some say even Iran, Southern Siberia, for us, they all take part of Central Asia. And we wanted to enlarge our understanding of the region by inviting artists, researchers from there. So yeah, we wanted to enrich our presence, not limiting ourselves only to post-Soviet countries, but kind of expand the understanding of the region. So here we have the picture of Nazira Nagimov's performance. She's a Tatar artist, and she was kind of doing this meditative thing with sheep wool, where she would just like kind of try to sort it out with the help of the participants. So the visitors, they were like kind of invited to participate in the performance. And then I'm coming to the end of my presentation. This is the last section, which is about Chiltans. Again, coming back to them. And here we had a chance to have professional dancer from Uzbekistan. Her name is Durdona Khontilavova. And she did several like workshops and also performances that were all about different traditions, different schools of Central Asian dance. As you might know, like in Kazakhstan, we have our own dance tradition, but in Uzbekistan, it is particularly rich because they have like Tashkent tradition, Bukharian tradition, different regions, and each region has its like characteristic movements. So Durdona was showing these movements, and then like she put a costume. And why she did it? Because she was actually the main character of Saodat's film, the one that was about Cinderella, this legend of the region. So this was our way to kind of make a circle and to go back to the beginning. So we kind of made a cycle with our public program and got back to where we started from. So yeah, I think I'm done for now. Please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you very much. I'm gonna give the floor to my colleagues and fellow artists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dilda. Can I invite Jazgul to be the next one, please?
Yes, thank you. Will you share the presentation, or should I share it?
You share your screen.
Oh, okay. So it'll take a little time. I thought we would share it. Is it possible to share from there?
No. Oh, from my desktop. Share. Yes.
Okay.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Dilda, for starting this conversation. My name is Jazgul, and I'm a social practice artist from Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. My subject matter usually relate to the topics about gender politics, about migration and borders. And my main form of art is installation. And recently I have also started experimenting with sounds. And I would like to start with this work. It's called The Mother Tongue. And the reason why is because it is symbolic and relates to most of the things that I talk about in my artistic practices. And specifically, as my colleague Dilda already mentioned about the Chiltans, very often these are the spirits or bodies, or not always humans, but as well it could be animals, it could be natural elements, it could be objects that help us appear in our difficult times. So for me, Chiltans are rather something that they're so strong, they're so present in our life, but despite them sometimes being physically absent, we still feel them through different senses, such as when we're sleeping, when we dream, we can dream about it. They can appear in our dreams. We can smell, we experience them through the sound, through energy, through tactility. So Chiltan for me is something, some of these elements that we don't necessarily see and feel physically every day, but they are somewhere in our ritual or spiritual practices. So if we can go to the next slide, I would continue. So for me, yes, thank you. So for me, Chiltans are the ones who help us healing our mental and physical state. But also when we were relating Chiltans, because they were more present in our history before our cultures were, let's say, changed from outside by Russification or by some type of more political and tactical actions by other powers. So today, for me, as someone who was raised after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Chiltan was something that only my grandmothers knew about it. Me necessarily in the modern life, it was difficult for me to, as I didn't have that much practice with them because my modern world was different. But for me, Chiltans are the ones that I try to interpret them and relate them to who they are in our modern time. So after the Soviet Union collapsed in the 90s, many of the countries like mine, they were not necessarily ready for it to deal with this economic crisis that we were feeling. And at that time, those were the women who left their countries, their families, their children to their husbands or to their parents and left to Russia in order to work, to earn income and to be able to send money every month so that they could survive. So this was the economic healing we needed. So, and the modern, the challenges were a little different. It was the economy that we have to solve and work and develop right now. So most of these women who were the first ones to leave and start earning money were the ones that didn't know Russian or any international languages. They didn't have higher education. They didn't have this professional practices who could earn a good amount of money. These were usually the people who worked as cleaners, as cookers, or the service people. And they were actually the ones who helped us to survive this economic crisis and be able to stabilize our economy somehow. So for me, these were the Chiltans that helped us heal in some ways. So if we go to the next slide, for me, Chiltans are the ones that we relate, we don't see, but we feel them spiritually somewhere. So the main work that accompanies this installation is actually the sound. A woman in the installation is sleeping. She doesn't move, or she doesn't have this anything that is happening to her from outside, but everything that happens is in her dreams, in her thoughts, that stays behind the scene. The audio collage that reflects it is actually the sounds of the sewing machine. So we worked with the females who are in 90% of the time, the factories employ a woman from Central Asia who are the migrants that I talked about earlier. They have very low wages of income, very low health security or social security. They don't have this many of the advantages that a normal worker or professional would have these days. So for me, this sound at the factory that they were surrounded by was very aggressive. It's rhythmic, but at the same time, it is so loud that it's difficult for a normal human to have a conversation and to talk about how are you doing, how is your life. It is so loud that it silences your voice immediately. So we try to have a conversation with them in this kind of environment and contrast it with the very intimate stories and with their singing. And that by itself created this rhythm first, the rhythm of the industry, but also rhythm in the patterns of stories that these females talked about. Very often the conversation, very often, no matter what question you ask, it's related about the giving birth experiences, about the death of parents, about love and care they give, about sacrifice, about surviving every day and being able to actually find happiness in this rhythmic life stories. So the audio was the main piece of this work, and you have to be present in this space and here to be able to get the whole story of this work. So in the next work, if we go to the next slide, it is called Mons Pubis Veneris. It is actually a process that starts long before the exhibition space. It starts interacting with the public before it leaves through the exhibition space, and it may even continue after the space, because during the performance, what we were doing is we twisted or we braided long hair that forms hair coming out of female genitalia, and which is something that are often a subject for shame, but also beauty, sexuality, but also subject of control and power politics. And actually, by installing this work, if you go to the next slide, by installing this work under the ground at the basement of the museum, it actually helped us to or supported this context by turning these hairs into the roots, going back to the roots, healing ourselves by braiding, by sharing the space together, by reflecting, and also by performing this act together, simply braiding the whole day. We grew this shape, shared the space, and practiced the practice of resistance, healing, and care. And next slide, please. During this performance, we extended the hair, and the hair was made of the fabric cutouts, meaning from the fabric or old clothes or unused fabric textile that my colleagues brought together. So that gave most of them for people in Germany, and also the fabrics that wasted the amount of fabric during the production processes. It was by turning them into the hair. Yes, on one hand, it was it was related to the previous subject that I talked about. It was something that goes through the hands or processes of the female who are employed by this kind of production, garment production. But also it's a shared ritual of braiding a female symbol, and we grew together care and resistance that we talked about already. So this installation was on one hand, it's about the performing this act. At the same time, it's questioning the sustainability matters that not only related to the environment, but also related to the human health that we cause throughout the process of garment production, and that comes through the hands of the female and female stories, and their stories that actually are silenced by so much noise that are caused by technology and industrial production generally. The next slide, please. In Documenta 15 this year, as the main concept was lumbung, which is a shared pot, rice. It was something that was easy for us to understand because at this Documenta, the Global South came to North, and they brought together the art that they understand, the language of art that they understand, and inevitably the main concept or the main questions they raise are related to the concept of decolonizing, the healing process, something that is relevant today, and how these people, we find a way to heal ourselves every day. And for us, art is something you could see in the space, that art is something really different than what an audience in Europe was used to. And during our conversation, one of the visitors, he said, the local ones, he said, this is not art that I'm used to, and I'm not necessarily fond of it. It's not really my story. I'm not really ready for it. I don't know how to relate to it, which was actually, I think, one of the signs how our contexts are so different that it also affects on the way how we practice art. Because for us, art doesn't stay in the museum and end at the museum. Art is something that starts before the museum spaces and actually continues after the spaces, after the exhibition space. And it doesn't necessarily has to hang and be promoted by galleries or be curated. It is something that we live with every day. And it could be simple things as braiding, as cooking, as sharing spaces, as reflecting, as telling, as singing. But this is the art that we do and practice when we're trying to reflect on what we have today and how we move on to the future. So thank you so much. And by this particular experience and by this gesture, very generous gesture by Saodat, it actually helped us to question a lot of the things that we don't necessarily maybe see or feel in our everyday life, because it's silenced by so much noise that is inputted from outside, not necessarily coming from inside. This is all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jazgul. Next, we have Daria. Yeah. Can you share it also? Yeah, I will share. I'll share from here. Yeah. I will share it from my side too. You will see there. Yeah. Yeah. Do you hear me? Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Daria. I'm a multidisciplinary artist and currently a student at Lindower Str. I was born and raised in Tashkent, but it's already my 12th year in Berlin. I primarily paint in oils and acrylic, but in DAVRA I work with sculpture and performance. For publication, I did wax sculptures, and for a public program, I did performance, which was also based on the process of sculpture. Today, I will talk about this performance. Chilltans took place in my practice when Saodat invited me to Daria. When she asked us to try to understand who can be Chiltans for us now, I remember that my mother told me that as a child, I let her know that I see some privilege being apart. I decided that these villagers are my Chiltans because the childhood and the freedom, which is inherent in children, is the most interesting thing for me as an artist nowadays. The reason is that I, like many of you, paint and draw since my childhood, and many of my drawings from this time have been preserved. So looking at them, I realized that they were very free, intuitive at the beginning, and gradually I began to lose this freedom. With other words, paintings and drawings became much more rational. I think that the moment when I stopped talking about city creatures was the beginning of the loss of this freedom. And in my work, I wanted to capture this moment. My performance is called The Other Skin. It was a durational one. It lasted 6 hours long. I had 3 sessions, 2 hours each. The main material with which I worked during the performance was plasticine, the material which is usually used mainly by children. So what I did, I was all in white, my clothes were white, I had white makeup, made a color and covered it with white plastilin to reach an effect that this color is part of me. Next slide, please. This is how my color looked like before the beginning of the performance. Next slide, please. I had 40 glass jars in front of me, picked plasticine off from myself, sculpted Chiltans, and closed them in glass jars to throw questions like, where are they now? Maybe it's dangerous for them being with me. Maybe they are in jails, like my inner freedom. Because in our society, of course, it's not okay to see any invisible creatures or even to say that you are seeing them. At some point, you're beginning to play by rules and consequently use the opportunity to be the person who you are by nature. When I picked up the plasticine from the color, there were holes. They looked like rounds. I wanted to show that I've lost something very important, and that these rounds still bother me. Next slide. The process of making Chiltans was intuitive. I had no idea how they will look like in the end. Here you can see 2 of them. I chose the red light because it was kind of reference to my previous works first. Red and green are mostly these colors by me. This choice is dictated by the objects I work with in my main artistic praxis. I decided to use white as neutral base to make my Chiltans be able to transfer to other conditions with the help of other colors. During my performance, I wanted to stop the time and be transported to the moment when they were still with me. Such-wise, this artificial light pulled me and my audience out of reality and served as a time machine. It relieved Chiltans at the time of performance. Thank you.
Yeah. Next, do you please, Nazira?
Hi, I hope I heard it right, that I'm coming next, right?
Yes.
No, it was Benazir, I think.
Sorry. Go for it.
Hello, my name is Benazir.
I'm not to say four for this time. I'm based in Berlin. We work mainly with graphic art, poetry, video art, and religion. As a part of the collective, that is involved to publication of the things in the public property of the Documenta. In the publication, we put poems dedicated to the public, different students, and for the public property. I prepared a collective performance called to Reading Spirits. And the video poetry that was based on stories I heard from my parents about my grandparents, and unfortunately didn't see the passed away before a moment. So, but I always felt a connection with my ancestors, especially when we were becoming religious at the Chiltan's village to honor the memory of ancestors, relatives that passed away, pray for them, and to share a meal together. So that was the main inspiration that became a base of the collective performance called Reading Spirits. The ritual of reading spirits is connected to the ancient Buddhist and Islamic beliefs. But nowadays, the rituals of reading spirits is when you cook the ritual bread and the smell of it, when you cook. Is a food for the ancestors. Nowadays it's this ritual is mixed with this Islamic elements, like reading the Quran, mentioning the God's prayers, celebrating during Ramazan and Golden night. And nowadays, as I said before, in Kyrgyzstan and Arab culture, almost every family cooks the ritual bread on every Thursday or Friday to call relatives that passed away, and then the ritual bread that is shared with neighbors or people in. So the main performance was the whole day, and we cook the ritual bread that refers to Jedina, means which is the seven bread, and these which is prepared from simple ingredients. From the yeast of dough, fried in hot oil. Also with the Chiltan, we prepared the four sauce, which was so traditional bread that usually cooked on holidays. Portions in the right side, they are smaller and they have different forms. They can be triangle or round shape. So my mom usually cooks chicken this on the left side the ritual bread every Friday, and when she sees the grandparents in the dreams, the next day she cooked this. And then my main My main inspiration for the mission was our family gatherings at our grandparents' village, where we were cooking all together, sharing stories of our grandparents, praying for them, remembering them. We believe that they become happy with the fear when we gathering all together. And the small of food is giving them strength, discipline. When I was out of my hometown and preparing the project for the public level, it was very homesick. And for the first time, I started to put the ritual bread and reading the prayers from my ancestors. The whole process of cooking kind of meditative process. Whether I shared with our DAVRA team together in gratitude performance. I believe the process of this process unite people and share food is not only team itself, but it's very spiritual. It unites process that takes place in honor our ancestors. So the ritual itself also related to ancient rituals when people, as I said, gathering and is so the next slide, I prepared the video poetry. I combined the visuals in the background with the nature elements and also the evidence that was from the friend, composer, and my voice reading the poems. It was a challenge to make visuals, therefore I wanted to capture my grandparents' village. So I decided to visualize the nature elements such as trees and leaves, the water and flesh. Is referred to ancient pre-Islamic beliefs where ancestors honored the nature. The poetry was influenced, also the poetry was also influenced by elements of nature such as water, moon, trees. But the main source of inspiration came from stories of my grandparents that I mixed in fictional stories. For instance, there is a poem that died at a young age. She sacrificed her life to save my grandfather from the illness. So she made a ritual to save him and get his grandfather was saved. It was also interesting that I discovered that my grandfather was a shaman, which means a shaman that cure people with prayers, and many people were visiting him, and it was fascinating to discover that my family was a deeply connected with the ancient rituals. So I find very, very positive. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I invite the next one, Intizor? Okay, you there?
Hi, yes, my name is Intizor, and I will try to share my screen. Just a moment.
Can you speak a little bit louder, please?
Oh, yeah, yes, sure, I can.
Yeah, could you share your screen? Or shall I do it?
It's still not shared.
I started to share. I can't see yet. But, Okay. No, it's not.
You can see it now?
Yeah, yeah, I can see you now. Can you try to share screen? I did. You can see. I'm not sharing. Could you try again? If you can't, I'll share from here.
You can see.
Yes.
Or you can see you can see?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, please.
So
Intizor,
so
the microphone closer because we're not hearing you.
Okay. So my name is Intizor. I live in Almaty, Kazakhstan, and yes, for public program for DAVRA, I did a performance called Precious Drops, and on this performance, I wanted to focus on the tea, because the tea is such a common practice. And for example, I drink a tea yesterday, and I drink it today, and I will drink it tomorrow. So I think it's a nice way of saying how our actions in the past will affect us today and will affect us tomorrow as well. And so for the performance, I poured the tea 40 into 40 cups, but I poured only 1 drop of tea, and then I gathered all this the 41st cup, and then I drink it. And to me it was so there are a couple of things here for me. So the first one, there is a tea, which means can you speak the truth? That's why while I was the tea, I was at the same time singing Uyghur folk song, which is it was about love, but the main gesture for me was to sing on Uyghur. Then why there are drops? Because when we were discussing it with DAVRA, I told to the girls that because we have water crisis in the region, but honestly, like in so many places nowadays, but in our region too, and I wanted and to me is water is something so important and so precious, and sometimes I even think that we don't need to wear jewels, but we can wear water instead, because of how much it's beautiful and important. And yes, and the main reference for this was the performance by Beyonce, which you can see on the left, on the right. Yes, and that was my performance. And for the public, for the publication, I did poetic text, and so we were choosing from a list of Paris, and I chose the water Paris, of course, and but it's specific water Paris. It's Amu Darya, And Amudarya is a river that is a river that crosses a lot of countries in our region, and it's really important. And for the publication, I mainly worked with the memories that have my father, and he grew up. Well, he grew up. I don't know if you can see. Oh, so Urgench. He grew up near here. So and the Amudarya was a big part of his life. And when I started researching the river, I learned that actually one of the legends say the Pamir in the mountains, and people were saying that the river, it falls from the heaven, from the paradise. And I thought it's such a nice image. And so in my poem, she decided to go from the paradise to the earth, and then because she's so big, and so she tries to show the whole world in her reflection, and but then by the end she unfortunately starts to disappear, because this is what's happening right now. But what I like about the water is that yes, it's disappearing, but it never completely disappears, and it's not, to me, it's not the death for this part, I guess. And then the second pari for the publication, it was tiger pari, because when I started to ask my father about earliest memories he has, and he actually told me about the one that includes tiger, and I was so surprised with it. But turns out that when my father was still a kid, there were tigers in Kharazm, in the region, and it was the last ones, but still they were present, and now there are none. And yes, it was. I was to, let's say, to put a reminder about them. And also the thing that I'm doing with my hands, this is what my father told me, that they were on the bank near Amudarya. They were playing, but they weren't making castles out of sand, but they were mainly making footprints of the animals and birds. And this is a footprint of a tiger. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Intizor. Next one, can you invite Aïda, please?
We can't hear you.
Still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the earphones, sorry. So hi again, nice to see you all and nice to meet you, who I haven't seen before. My name is Aïda and I'm an artist and curator from Kazakhstan. I'm gonna share my screen. So today,
So the presentation I wanted to show is on the it's asking me for system preferences. Okay. It's basically how my practice kind of evolved into the projects that DAVRA created space for us to make. Sorry, Mooney, could you share my presentation as well? I'm really sorry, but yeah, this is not my laptop, so it's really hard to do anything here. Mooney, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here, going to share.
Very much. So basically my practice kind of, when we started working with DAVRA as a research process, and we were started thinking and having more and more conversations about Chiltan and reading more literature about it. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind that you have to create something absolutely new and innovative. But then after a while, you kind of sit down and calm down and start looking more into your own practice and start thinking about how maybe some topics can be evolved there. And so on the first slide, you see my performance from 2018. It's about a character, a very famous character in Kazakh folk tales. Their name are Jesternak. It's one of the most important and terrifying antagonists who appears in the form of a tall, cold female figure, and they come by strangers in a forest, and they wait for them to fall asleep, and they slit their throats and kind of kill them. And the only way how to kill Jesternak is to chop their nails off. And so for a long time, I've heard this folk tale in my home before going to sleep for some reason. But after a while, especially after this performance, because it was kind of one of the characters of my nightmares, I started kind of reinventing the character and thinking about how can I look at this character in another way. And the research that we did with DAVRA was very, very fruitful in that way, that I finally realized that, you know, this self-sacrificial process of killing your own antagonists is not necessary, because sometimes when you look deeper in folktales, you realize that the characters are more complex and they are not as one-dimensional as we see them in the later days, especially because Kazakhstan, as you said before, it's one of the former Soviet countries, and we've went through a lot of cultural changes through 100 years of the last 100 years. And the Kazakh culture, especially the literature, is an oral kind of based culture. So basically any stories, any tales, and any poems, they are passed through from person to person orally. And the first time they were all written down, it was the arrival of Russian ethnographers. And even if they did know the language, they didn't know them as much and as well to include all of the specifics. So maybe that's one of the reasons that today our folktales suffer from being one-dimensional, or kind of not very specific, or not kind of more generic, right? And so in the next slide, you can see the process of reinventing Jesternak that I did for the publication of DAVRA. I was thinking, these are in the image on the left, these are the nails that I chopped in the performance in 2018. And then I worked with queer and transgender models who just, I don't know, graciously accepted my idea that, you know, we need to decolonize not only Kazakh folktales, but the bodies that they represent. And most antagonists today in folktales of Central Asia, they are represented by female features. They are either elder or kind of middle-aged women. And with Jesternak, she's one of the only versions where they appeal to her beauty or something like that. And so there were two this incredible models who helped me to kind of create this space and new characters who will be decolonized, because we can actually see and look at them in another way, look at them in a not demonic way, you know, not in a negative way, because what we need is a liberation of knowledge that has been maybe ripped off or maybe has been kind of violated. And yeah, I think we need to liberate the knowledge and the notion of what is female and what is femininity. And yeah, and so this is what I've tried to do in the publication. And in the next slide, you see one of the days we've spent with a group of different people reading Kazakh folktales in English. And all of the folktales that I've chosen, they were based on, again, on the idea that there were much more and much many antagonists and folktales in Central Asian stories or in Central Asian culture today. And it is all, there are some speculations, but because this theme is still not yet researched well enough, there are still kind of assumptions that all of the demonization of female characters, semi-godly or I don't know, semi-divine characters, especially like Chiltan or Pari, they happened after the Islam came to the steppes, because before that, Kazakh culture and a lot of nomadic cultures, they belong to paganism, and there was this idea of pantheism, and they have a lot of goddesses, a lot of gods, and the modern researchers, they believe that maybe Jesternak and some other characters, they might derive from this heavenly, not heavenly, but divine creatures. And after religions like Islam come to the area, they kind of shift the idea of shapeshifters, because shapeshifting is not exactly a good quality in monotheistic religions. So yeah, we had an incredible roundtable with young students and different adults from everywhere around the world who sat down and read tales, and we shared our stories from our homes, because I was really happy to find out from German students that they have some folk tales that demonize, they have the same pattern of demonizing female characters. And yeah, we thought a lot about how can we decolonize that notion, and how can we look at those folk tales in a modern way and reinterpret them without forgetting them, because we don't want to become more and more generic and having the same story, unified story everywhere. We want to have our own cultural kind of background, but there is maybe time and space for recreation or kind of reinvention of those things. And in the next slide, you can see a start of my research for the second project I did for DAVRA public program. It was part of my video kind of performative installation. It was a film called Alaqan. It's about my grandmother. And here you can see the pictures of my grandma's hands since I started taking them in 2019, when I kind of started thinking about what's going to happen after she passes and who's going to take in the heritage that she knows, because the thing that she's making is called qurt. It's fermented dairy, kind of a cheese product that is made in Central Asia. And in my family, nobody else knows, in a female line, nobody else knows how to make them, actually. Not my mom, not my aunts, it's only my grandma. And so for the first time in 2019, I was far away. I was doing my MFA, and I thought, like, because they brought, my mom was visiting and she brought some gifts for my grandma. And for the first time there, I realized that if she's gone, this knowledge, this ritual, this all this process is going to be gone with her. And so I started kind of recording and talking about it and asking her more questions. But for the first time, I think I become brave enough with DAVRA and with a process that was inhibited to us throughout this 9 months, when we kind of cherished each other and supported each other, that I finally was able to make the film that I made for the public program. In the next slide, you can see an opening scene. Alaqan is the name of an ancient Kazakh ornament that looks like a two-colored snake. And but also it's kind of, it means a mixed blood, you know. And I think it because when you look at your palm of the hand, you can see both your veins, but also kind of the reddish lines. So I think in a way that ornament kind of derives from that. But also the film became kind of this idea of following my grandmother, but then I started following my mom as well because we're all in the same house. And then, and for me, it became this idea that, you know, Chiltans can also mean a daily kind of routine of healing everything around you. And it's what most women do every day. They create this incredible space and incredible unity in everything they touch with their hands. And yeah, and so this film became like a small documentation of that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Aïda. May I please ask Madina to be the next one, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share the screen. Okay. No. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
So yeah, hey everyone, I'm Madina, and I'm multidisciplinary artist and illustrator, also workshop facilitator, born and raised in Kazakhstan, currently living in London. So yeah, for the DAVRA project, I was taking care of 3 things, workshops, also interactive installation. So let me start from the Art of Cooking Manti workshop. So basically, from the first glance, some like random people, when they are looking of cooking Manti on Documenta 15, they can say, oh, what a stupid thing, or maybe self-exoticization thing. Like, but let me just, I don't know, deep inside the project, so maybe some of the people change their, I don't know, opinions. So yeah, I mean, because of the whole concept behind this Documenta 15 was collectivity, I couldn't think of any other practice that includes sounds, smells, tastes, and which will be collective work. I couldn't think of any other thing than cooking Manti. Also, it's a practice, you know, you might already tried Manti in your life. It's like steamed dumplings with veggie or meat fillings. And yeah, we back in the days were cooking Manti once in a week. So like all relatives were gathering in our house, and it was the place of living stories, of sharing experiences. It's the place for all of the women from different generations uniting with each other, and also I don't know, like, no matter how old are you young, are you 6 years old or 60 years old, you're so welcomed to cook Manti, to form these edible sculptures. And there are no like written instructions how you should form those sculptures. You just repeat after your mothers, aunties, older sisters, movement of hands. It's like you know, dances and of like hands and gestures. And for me, it's so beautiful. Also, it is so hilarious and like unbelievable to cook Manti in the backyard of the most, like, I don't know, classic European art institutions. And also when people like living in dormitories inside Friedrichshain Museum, also taking a shower there, singing karaoke and cooking Manti. I mean, it's I don't know, monotonous, repetitive meditational practice. Also, you know, culinary practices situate themselves at the very necessary and rudimentary level, but at the same time very unrespected level. So people think, oh, what's the thing of cooking month? But you know, it takes so much intellectual work to plan, organize, go for shopping, then cooking, serving, I don't know, tidy up, clearing, putting things away, and yeah, it's like I used this platform as you know, to show and like display all invisible work of millions of women who are doing all this unpaid domestic and care work. Yes, and there is studies and report by United Nations that women actually who are taking care of this work, contributing to GDP and to the economy more than manufacturing or commerce sectors. So yeah, and yeah, it's the like act of celebrating all these women who are as perpetuum mobile, you know, always never ending machines are doing all this work, and they are like the reason why we all exist. And yeah, I've done some illustration for publication also, like depicting how to cook command the instructions, but in the way of shapes and ornaments and patterns. And it's beautiful how, depending on different region, the form of manti can be like different. And those photos done by me like 12 years ago, and when my mother and auntie is cooking manti, and I wouldn't think we would do this like practice in Castle. And next one is a workshop, talisman or amulets production workshop for kids. So yeah, back in the days, and still our ancestors were doing like talismans, which can consist of prayers from Quran, or maybe before Islam came to our place, it was just you know, stone shapes like circles or triangles, or a piece of soil in clothes. So okay, we were nomadic culture, but we were always respecting our soil, because that we had respect to the place we were born, and we were carrying this piece of soil wherever we go. And yeah, with the hints of our ancestors, I decided to conduct a workshop with talismans, but not only with soil from our homelets, but also, you know, edible stuff like gummy bears, coins from travels, all the finds and twigs, I don't know, beads from plants, or imprints on clays, like so everything that we, like our self-belief. I mean, because when I was kid, I didn't understand why I should take prayers, which I don't understand at all. So the most important stuff is in what we believe in. So we invented our like meanings by ourselves, and yeah, it was fun. And the next one is interactive audio viewing. So it's on the left side. You can see depiction of 7 witches. So this project was titled Burn Jalmos Kimper, is a parallel to Burn the Witches. Basically, I was doing research with based on the studies of Silvia Federici. She's a scholar and feminist activist, and her like field of study was European and African witches and modern witches. And yeah, I was thinking that modern witches can be considered as young brides in our region, Central Asian region, called Chiltans, or called Kellins. So yeah, and basically participants could visitors of Documenta could just touch different regions of the weaving and hear the stories of real Chilltans who were not accepted in the new families, who were demonized, slut-shamed, just because they were different from the norms of, images of how proper woman should look like, should behave like, and yeah, they were stumbled upon all these prohibitions of the patriarchal societies, and why it's burns almost Kemper, because Kemper is a word for old woman, and in studies of Silvia Federici, you could also see the depictions of witches, and basically the witches, both African and European, was just a regular woman who was lonely and couldn't serve society anymore. So that's why with the rise of capitalism, society and government wanted to just get rid of those women. That's why they were demonized, accused of things that they never done. When you hear these interviews or monologues of those killings or young brides, the most of them were accused of putting a spell of their husbands, or inclination. So basically it was the way how to get married and get this man from the opinions of the relatives. Besides art, I'm doing some illustration, and nowadays I'm continuing of this Monte thing, but with the only difference, I don't eat them. I am shaping the real sculptures, and let's see how this journey will continue. Yeah, thank you so much for attention. If you have just questions, just ask. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Madina. May I invite Dana to be the next one, please?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting us. Yes, my name is Dana Iskakova, and I'm an artist from Kazakhstan as well. So usually I work with interactive art and with conceptual and imaginary art, I think. And when I was invited to DAVRA, to be honest, I've never heard about Chiltans before this project, and so it was very interesting, to research on this field in general, to understand who are they and why did we lose this, why we lost this information, this knowledge, not lost, but it just kind of I don't know, became blurry or something. And well, yes, because many things happened, but I was reading texts about them and about Pieras as well, and these are very in many regards similar notions, not notions, but they're like mythological creatures, and they're both like humans, but they're both spirits, and it's yes, they're shape-shifting, but they also can be matter or something like water or rocks or animals or like grass or something, and it's very interesting that they can be found anywhere, and it's what is also interesting, that they have this this very nature that that they can be material as well as spiritual or something like this. And of course I thought about mirrors, and I wanted to work with mirrors, and I wanted to create mirrors ourselves, and I wanted to to find Chiltans ourselves, to go through this path all together and try to find them in the reflections. And when I started thinking about this whole idea, I didn't know how to make mirror, to be honest. I didn't know how to, but I thought of many different methods. And this is, for example, to be honest, is a glass, but I painted it with a mirror effect spray. So it was like, but you couldn't almost see yourself in that mirror because it was not a mirror, it was like glass. In our publication, we chose different periods that we wanted to write about or to somehow, I don't know, illustrate or something to think about. And I, of course, decided to choose Temur Pera because Temur is translated as iron, and Pera is something like nymph or something like that in Central Asian mythology. And I wanted to find glimpses of Temur Pera and reflections of my fellow art practitioners from Kazakhstan. And for our public program, as I said, I wanted us to make mirrors ourselves. So I had 40 round pieces of stainless steel. And I invited people to join me to polish this metals until they were mirrors. So we were polishing them all together. 40 people joined me, and we were all like on different paths, and it was very interesting that people approached it very differently, and some people were content even if it was like misty, but like and blurry, but you could but you could see yourself still. It was blurry, but you started to see something there. And but some other people were like very, very stubborn, and they wanted it to be perfect mirrors, and so they did. And I have several people who did like who polished them to be absolutely perfect mirrors. And it was great to see that we were all experiences this collective, as I called it, something like not interactive, but collective, or collective perform. I don't remember how I call it, but how I called it. But what?
Participatory?
Participatory, yes, maybe. But I understood that this is just working session, you know, just polishing all together. And I thought, of course, about Central Asian female labor, which is monotone, which is very like, it was also, when you polish it, it seems like you're just cleaning it. Like you're cleaning it till it's like perfect. So these are actually like not napkins, but how do you call them? Like, and you polish them, and this layers of metal would go away, and you were like using water to polish it. So it was like cleaning it all together, cleaning our, I don't know, something. Well, since I didn't know much about Chiltans, and I know that there's a lot of knowledge that got lost, or but it is still present somewhere, but we should just try our way to find it, to like bring it back to ourselves. So yes. And so yeah, we did this with 40 people and received, well, not received, but got 40 mirrors. So yes. And I just wanted to capture Chiltans, you know, to receive like 40 images of them. So I think they were different, but I think that, yeah, we somehow did this all together, maybe. So yeah, thank you. I don't know if I should add something else. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dana. And please welcome the next one, Nazira, please.
Hi, my name is Nazira Karimi. I'm an artist from Tajikistan and Kazakhstan, somehow all over Central Asia. So let's say it's Central Asian. And I'm going to share my screen and talk about the project that I've made for DAVRA. Sorry, this is from... Okay, so when I got to DAVRA Collective and we started researching Chiltans, actually in my own practice, I was always focusing also on the traditional knowledge that is given orally from, and usually it's from a woman to woman, because I was raised and surrounded by women mostly my whole life, and I continue living in female communities and working in female communities, as you can see, I thought that DAVRA became Chiltans for me because I considered Chiltans as spiritual guides or like your protectors, and I found myself in between all the Chiltans, all the beautiful women that surround me in the DAVRA Collective. And I also work in my practice with repetition and kind of repetitive patterns regarding to whatever, actually. And when I was thinking about 40 Chiltans, 40 day public program, I immediately thought about 40 braids that traditionally are done in Tajikistan to young women. And I also worked already with braiding. This is my old work from 2020. It was video, and I also was thinking about braiding hair and how repetitive is that pattern, and how in general repetitive is this moment of like your mother braiding your hair, or you braiding someone's hair, or you braiding your own hair. And yeah, so I did a performance and sound installation. So it was more like a performative sound installation. It was 5-channel sound that I did in collaboration with my colleague Zaire Sherman. And I tried with the sound to bring people in Central Asia, to be honest, or more like I was trying to recreate this memory of mine that I have, the environment that I remember from when I was braided these 40 braids. And yeah, so I tried to create this 5-channel sound installation, but actually I also wanted to make this sound a little bit tense, because for me, I was thinking a lot about, like at the moment I'm based in Vienna, in Austria, and how actually I feel so free in living in Central Asia, but actually there are so many limits due to political regime and so on and so on. And at the same time, you can be so free living in Europe, but you feel so limited, you know, and so some tension was necessary for me in this installation. And together with my colleagues from the DAVRA Collective, we braided 40 braids to each other, kind of, yeah. And yeah, and I wanted to understand this this movement, this repetition of the things, yeah. And also together with Aïda Adilbek, we combined together screening during the 40 days of DAVRA, yeah, and showed some Central Asian female art too. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's all of today's presentation. Thank you very much for joining us from online. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat. Yeah, we have very limited time now, but please do. And so for us who's present here, if you have any questions, please use the chance to ask DAVRA. And we will have them again, hopefully next year, because we're scheduling a screening and conversation. We saw that in spring 2023, and we hope at that occasion we'll have DAVRA with us again.
Thank you very much for having us. And yeah, please feel free to ask any questions. And also sorry if it was a bit not clear, because there is a lot to be told, and I think one day we're gonna tell everything. Maybe it was not today. Thank you.
Yes, I think today's event we just kind of like introduce DAVRA to a more broad audiences, and also like which is the first cooperation between DAVRA and the AFSAR, and we are expecting more to come next, especially next year. Yeah, thank you all very much for preparing today's presentation. Now I received a question from Maya. I can read here. What are the future plans for DAVRA Collective? Are you planning on expanding or any other additional involvement with Central Asian artists?
Well, I can try to answer this question. Thank you very much, Maya, for this question. It's an interesting one. I can say that for now, we're planning a project, which I hope we'll announce soon in Central Asia, so in the region, because the activities we told you about today, they took place in Europe, and now we, of course, we want to do something in the region, in our home countries. So yeah, soon we're going to announce a new project, and of course we continue our work, because the idea was to create not only artistic collective but also research group, so that we could collaborate and continue our collective research on the region, on its history. Yeah, so that's what I can say. If some the colleagues want to add something, please feel free.
I kind of want to respond to Aisha's question that is coming next. Oh, shall I read it first, right?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. I'm very curious what kind of collective individual learnings, understandings came to you all during your 40 days of Chiltans at Documenta. I must say that being together with my colleagues and being together with the DAVRA Collective actually changed a lot for me personally in my artistic practice, and made me understand the community better and the importance of community. And that's why I think that the DAVRA Collective became my Chiltans for me, because I understood how powerful we are when we are together. Yes, so I think I understood the power of ours. Yeah.
I also wanted like profit of this opportunity to thank two of our very special guests here. We have Muqaddas Majid and Gulnur Muqajanova, and they were our invitees in Kassel. They were with us because they were not only, I don't think I told it, but they were not only DAVRA girls doing their activations in Kassel. We also invited other individual artists, researchers. So yeah, there were two of them, and thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for the talk today. We also wondering, we have 9 artists today. Each of you, I want to say thank you for your presentation and joining our discussion. I have a question about number 14. Maybe somebody already explained about the symbol or implication or the connotation of the number 40. What does it mean in Central Asia? This number 40 keep repeating the whole presentation of many of you. So maybe if you can explain what does it mean in Central Asia, it would be great. Thank you.
I'm sorry, could you please write the question in the chat because we did not hear it.
Oh, can you hear now? I will pass on the mic.
Yeah, maybe with the mic.
Okay. My question was, what's the implication of number 14 in Central Asia? What's the symbol? What's the meaning of number 40? Because number 40 keep repeating in the whole presentation of 9 of you. So I was wondering.
So if I heard it correctly, the question was about the meaning of number 40, right? Yeah.
Yes, I think you have explained, but please
Yeah, sure.
emphasize, elaborate it again.
Yeah, it's true that I did not elaborate on this precise moment, and there are many things on which I could elaborate, but we just don't have a lot of time. But in Central Asia, basically, you have like number 40 it's a sacred number. We in our culture have many things that are written around this number. So in Central Asia, we would celebrate 40 days after a birth of someone. We would also kind of mark 40 days after death of someone. So these are like the numbers that always come back to us, and they are always like present within rituals and things that we do. There's also like this period of 40 hottest days, chilla. There's also like 40 coldest days. And also if you look at, I think, basic rhythm of our bodies as like natural organisms, we have this like 40 weeks of pregnancy. We have even like the word quarantine, like which became very popular because of the pandemics. It also comes from this word 40, 40, 40 in Italian. So it's like this important period during which I think we can either change or transform thing in our own body. So this is like, that's why the whole thing was about it. And also I must add that Saodat's been working on this number since many years, and she has many films that are around this, like where she did research around this number 40. So it was also like kind of logical continuation of her own practice.
Thank you very much. There is a next question coming in. I'll read it. It's also in the chat. If anybody's connection is not that stable, please check. Thank you all for your presentation. I would like to know more about how is the situation in Central Asia itself. Is there a lot of discourse going on decoloniality? How do you perceive the possibilities to talk about it there in art context compared to the exhibition context of Documenta in Europe?
Would someone like to answer, or would you like me to answer, girls?
I think yes and no. I think it's a subject matter, maybe lives more inside and most of us, but I am from Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. At this moment, I wouldn't see a lot of discussion on it, at least on the artistic level. Maybe we just talk about it differently. But I think this topic is more political. And I think this is something that comes more from the younger artists or younger curators, and also something that because, for example, at the same time, when we talk about the colonial subjects, sometimes from our own community, we hear the criticism that we might be exoticizing or doing too much about by referencing to something that is from our history, or reviving, or actually referring to what's our own, and actually talking about identities sometimes. That is criticized being a bit too about the exotic sides of being who we are. So sometimes it's difficult to talk about it. I think this is a discussion that always that has to be researched, and also I think understood before to talk about it, what it really means for us at the locally. But during this experience, when Sadat was working with us, something that I started feeling more consciously was that certain notions they live in us, certain elements they are with us or in us through our DNAs that we don't necessarily may not feel today because of everything that is happening in the world. But sometimes we feel it, that connection, because culturally for example, our people were very close to nature, like through such religions as Tengri, it was an attempt for us to really find harmony with the earth, with the sky. We believe that the spirit, every natural element, they have a spirit. And our task as humans was actually find this common language with the environment and be able to survive together. So that kind of, today we don't practice it because we're a Muslim or we are something else. And that is something that is not spoken in the everyday life. But I think if we dig really inside that, like Sadat was doing with us through art, it wakes up. Just like she was able to wake that up inside especially through the publication, through the research, because research actually leads you to go back and to re-understand, re-attack, re-criticize, and interpret to what we feel or what we have to modern life. So I think this needs more research and more conscious attempts to talk about it. And I think one of the ways is through art, but I don't see that it is being very actively practiced or talked about in the art scene in Central Asia, or at least in Bishkek at this moment.
Yeah, can I speak about a bit from Kazakhstan side? So yeah, I'm completely agree with Jazgul. It depends on different country and regions, and also I'm living in my bubble of people. So for me, decoloniality is everywhere in Kazakhstan. I mean, speaking of language initiative, especially after the war, first with Ukraine. So people, it's not only art communities, it's just ordinary people started to vigorously learning Kazakh language, to find a way back to our roots. And also there are queer Kazakh initiatives coming, and I don't know, Babalar Press from Aisha Jandosova, Aïda, Iskakova. So I mean, also lectures on decoloniality. I think yeah, it's happening, the discourse exactly existing. And also the second part of the question was on comparison between contexts of Europe and Central Asia. I think it will be more easier, you know, to, for example, to organize and to, like, how to say, I don't know, dive into the context within the Central Asian region, because you don't need to explain on your background. You don't need to explain all these regions because all people know it. Also, like I can't wait to see DAVRA public program happening in the region.
And if I may add a little bit, that it's kind of both answering to Aisha's question about what our kind of knowledge, new knowledge that we perceived at Documenta was 40 days, but also it's generally even like the idea of public program, that many of the things that we did at the public program is, yeah, it's mundane. It's kind of very basic to people who live in Central Asia. But I think for me, it was another confirmation that our art is not supposed to, our notion of art is not needed to be centered and based on what is art in Western part of the world. And so cooking together, I don't know, creating amulets and anything else, sleeping together, napping together, it's all can be a form of art, and the first and foremost part of it is to be together, and it has to be fun together, right? And in terms of decoloniality, yeah, I think in Kazakhstan the conversation is much hotter, as Madina mentioned, after beginning of the war and a lot of immigration happening here in between countries. I think this topic became very kind of edgy in a way, and in Kazakhstan, we don't see any kind of movement from government. We see only movement from initiatives who are started by the local people and citizens who just, yeah, feel like they need to move on from this point of, yeah, very colonial point of view where we are dependent on our neighbors, basically.
Thank you. Thank you very much for answering. I would like to ask the audience a question. Yeah, I was thinking about some other questions, maybe can also relate it to the very last question. Because I was thinking about Central Asia, especially the word central, is kind of like indicates is where it's located geographically, but it's also considered the margin of, you know, a margin of Russia, or, you know, another side of China, those kind of like superpowers, at least in today's political contrasts or contests. And yeah, I think it made it Central Asia in a very interesting and quite challenging position to possess yourself, to approach all these big topics. I was thinking like decoloniality as, is her name Madina, is the contributor of the professor who wrote text in your publication. I also read her other texts. She was mentioning decoloniality in compare with decolonial, which is more popular resonates in Europe. Could you also like maybe talk about a little bit more about decoloniality, especially in this like the superpowers margin, like Central Asia was a place like when people excel from Russia, like they are kind of like sent to Central Asia, you know, and also it is a post-Soviet region. And yeah, in this kind of perspective, I hope I'm clear enough.
Yes, thank you for your question. It's an interesting one and a complex one also. I think even the way you formulate it reveals maybe a bit of colonial perspective, because you call the region margin, but we do not consider ourselves a margin when we consider ourselves pretty much a center of what we are and what we do. And that's why I think it's also cool that we are Central Asians. So we are in the center of our own understanding of the world, and we try to bring back this power of like creating ourselves and talking from where we are, from where I stand. Yeah, from this is as the name of our session. So we try to look at the outer world from our position. Of course, our position is quite challenging because we have China and Russia, superpowers, of course. But as I already told in the introduction, the problem with the region is that it was always perceived from the perspective of other forces that were performed on us. And we don't want this to continue. We want to perform ourselves, our I don't know, our knowledge, to produce our knowledge. We want to act ourselves. So this is why we think like initiatives like ours, like DAVRA, and many others are just ways to kind of reinforce and like self-center ourselves on us, on our history, on our perspective. So from our perspective, from where we are standing, we're pretty much the center, and we are just surrounded by these margins, imperial margins. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and also emphasizes on this on the theme from where I stand. As you know, Afsa's perspective, when we're talking about Asia, where is Asia, where it can be where you position yourself to be a, you know, it's more about positioning instead of a location in a geographic and political sense. Thank you very much. I think I will close today's session. Thank you again for joining us in Adilbek. And many thanks to you girls. I know it is very late in Central Asia. Thank you for staying up. And we talk again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good evening.
You too.